Hello everyone, it's DuckFader07. Today we are playing updated version of my 5-coral Reanimator Brew. Okay, so in this brew we're playing, of course, Grief and Solitude and multiple ways to scam it early. We have 10 ways to scam it, like Ephemerate, Persist, and there's the Spirit Realm. Of course, there is Archon of Cruelty, and my 4 discard outlets of choice, Evangel of Synthesis, which works very great in this build. Preordain here is a new addition in this updated version to help us find the Evangel, help us find the Archon when we need to discard it, help us find the ring or the missing pieces for scam removal or something like that. Okay, so everything else is same as in my previous list. Small changes to the sideboard, added the 4 Bowmasters, and that's basically it. So let's check out the gameplay. Okay, first match I played against Respect the Cat. Very cool, epic game. Very grindy from both sides, big battle. Okay, let's check out how this went. So, they played the Jan Saga. The deck he had a lot of good results with lately and made it pretty popular at the moment. So they go for Ephemerate turn 1. I still have a Persist to scam my Grief turn after, so I discarded the Spell Bomb from their hand and took the Bowmaster. So they go Ragavan Dash here and plays the Stomping Ground. Now they have Boseiju and Fatal Push, but I totally forget about Boseiju, and I do a mistake here playing Leyline Binding on their turn. So they was able to Boseiju in response, and that basically lost me the game. If this didn't happen, then they would be forced to do the Boseiju on my turn. I would still be on 12 life. I would not be able to play the Evangel here. Find the land I need to play the One Ring next turn, then maybe jump the Goyf or whatever. And yeah, but this unfortunately didn't happen, and yeah, I misplayed there, so that was the game. They had a removal for Evangel and finished. Okay, so game 2. I had a good hand here, Troll. I can cycle on turn 1, find the land I need, then I have multiple options for turn 2, Preordain or Evangel, whatever. So I go for a Fountain again here, a cycling Troll to find the Golden Shrine. I decide to play the Evangel here as a blocker, try to find another land to go for temporary lockdown. Luckily, opponent didn't have a removal here, and I decided just to remove both Goyf and Ragavan in this situation to buy me enough time so I can play out my ring. Okay, they decide to discard the Troll with the Totsis and play their Havarmite to exile my temporary lockdown. Okay, so I needed the land here, but didn't get it. Still, I had Preordain and the Bowmasters. This was good because their obvious plan was to destroy my temporary lockdown. So I went for the land I really wanted here with the Troll and hold my Bowmaster to play it after they to kill the Ragavan and jump the Goyf for the next turn. Okay. Okay, they obviously went for it, and this was fine. I decided to discard one of the rings. I really wanted to have this Leyline Binding in hand, but unfortunately, opponent had another Totsis to take my second ring. But I was still happy with the situation. I had Binding to exile Goyf. I had enough power on the field to kill Vrennesix. So I was still in a leading position. So I just went binding the Goyf, Vrennesix, kill Vrennesix with the creatures on the field. My opponent was in a top deck mode, basically same as I was at the moment. So I went, as I said, went Leyline, went for the attack, and yeah, It was important here to get rid of the Vran so it can't ping my Bowmaster. Opponent went for the Inquisition. I top decked the Ephemerate. They wait my attack phase, then try to play their Bowmaster. But I had a very good top deck at this point, and Ephemerate made them lose their Orc token, and also I get another counter on my Orc army, killing their Bowmaster, and opponent concedes at this point immediately. Okay, so that was it. Let's check out the last game. I decided to mulligan this, and I got much better 6 cards. I had Archon to discard with Evangel, had Bowmaster, Prismatic Ending. This is pretty good. Okay, so I played my fetch to find the Rogren Trial. My opponent didn't play much, just Saga and Soul Guide Lantern, so no early pressure was a good thing for me. Sometimes these replays are blocking a bit. Okay, as I said, I find that Rogren Triumph. And then I find the Ephemerate, but unfortunately it wasn't a good situation for me, because my opponent had a double heat in hand, and I wasn't able to scam my Griffin. So I removed the Bowmaster with the. I decided to take the heat. I wanted to get rid of both of removals here, since my opponent wasn't actually able to cast the Brennan 6 at this point, but maybe I should have gone for the Brennan 6 since they had the Saga. Yeah, still I had Evangel in my hand, and I was able to discard the Archon, which means they need another a graveyard hate piece. Of course they had the Saga here, but yeah. Okay, so this means they can't take other stuff. So opponent exiles a troll from the top, and I also, I think, top deck another troll. So just playing Evangel here is not really that bad, because I guess he's a good blocker for Ragavan. They still need a removal for it. The only I know what is in their hand, just Vren 6 and Ragavan at this point, which means Ragavan is not connecting next turn, and I got the 4th land, which is very good in case I top deck the Ring or Grief. My opponent then finds the Soul Guide Lantern, exiling my Archon from the graveyard, which was expected, and they also were able to get the Vrennesix on the field, but now I top deck the Ring I was talking about, which was exactly what I needed, and I was able to shock in, play the Ring, and turn this game around. Ring is definitely like that, definitely turns a game around often. And this is a pretty good example. So opponent played the Ragavan. I played the Ragavan this time. They had Saga active and the Soul Guide Lantern on the field. So if I didn't get this ring, it would be they would probably win. Okay, so uh, this John list is really prepared to play against the One Ring. They have multiple ways, and they're also very prepared to hate on the graveyard decks. There's a lot of graveyard hate, a lot of Havar might. So I decided it's best for me to give menace to the Evangel and the trade with both of these guys, and then use the binding to exile the Bren, if needed, of course. So I did exactly that. I exiled the Bren. They made another construct with Saga, but I was pretty safe at this point. I had another ring in hand. Still, I really needed brutal top decks and the brutal card selection in this matchup to actually be able to win this, but I got it. Okay, so I played my ring, holded the binding for their turn. I had the full domain. So they needed another Havar Might in this situation or deal somehow damage. They did find a Vren to bring back the Saga again. But it was definitely I was very favored from this point to actually win. Then I decided to go for a temporary lockdown. Used again my ring here and played the lockdown, exile the construct token, exile the brand, another brand 6. So I was still pretty much safe from damage from their side. And I had finally had the Solitude in hand. This is card I really needed at this point uh, to start gaining life. And it was perfect for their Goyf. Okay, so I decided to play the Leyland Binding anyway, so I can always just go for Solitude on their Construct token, of course. I took 2 damage there, draw more cards, had multiple options here. I decided to use the Solitude immediately, kill this Construct token. And I had another ring in hand in case they have another Havar Might, but my plan was basically draw the 4 cards here and then replay another ring from the hand. I tried to draw 4 cards here. They had Bowmasters in response, and I had Leyland Binding, which I saved for this exact situation. I was able to gain 3 life here with Solitude and replay my second ring to again gain the protection. Now I was very close to actually hard casting the Archon, which was yeah another plan to survive further. They still had the amazing hand with Urza Saga, still grinding, another Archon, cleared my entire board. I went to fetch with Marsh Flats, but I forgot I don't have any more fetchables with that fetch. I only had another island in a deck I can fetch, so I didn't. It was kind of a problem for me here. I didn't want to go to 3. So I wasn't able to leave the 1 mana open for binding. I decided to just use the Solitude. So my opponent goes for another construct and actually terminates my Archon, but yeah. I save 2 life here by exiling the construct token, then persist Archon on my turn. And they still had another Saga, another Goyf, another Ren on the field, but the ring was just too much. I had too much of life gain, too much of value going on, and I was finally able to solitude the Goyf, kill the Vren 6, just kill everything on the field, and win this game in the next few turns. So that was it. Okay, so a pretty fun game, definitely. And let's go to the match 2. Opponent starts against Relico Progenitus, against Persist deck, unfortunately. I started with the Preordain here, and immediately cast the Grief. So the Preordain was pretty good in this game, enabling me to find a Grief and just cast it immediately. This is a huge difference. So I was able to discard a card here, but it could be something even more important that puts them very far ahead in this early turn. So I discarded the card. They played. They had, of course, a natural Tron. I find the Indata Triumph here. Played the Leyline Binding, exile the Wormcoil. They had Bossage in hand, but didn't have a green mana. But they did find it. I was now able to fetch another Swamp and play the Wandering, get protection for this turn. Okay, so I had the protection from the ring this turn. Opponent had a lot of mana available, so they find Ugin or the Spirit Dragon, but weirdly enough, Ugin just wasn't really that good in a situation like this. It was fine. They could just go -4 here and kill the Grief and the Angel, but they decided to plus the Ugin. And I decided to Solitude the Wormcoil and then just try to continue attacking Ujin with the Evangel of Synthesis and find more stuff. They top deck Wandering, which was pretty good. Luckily, I used Wandering first, and I had multiple options to get rid of the ring. So I cycle the Troll again here, find a land, play the Touch, exile their ring, let them draw a card, but it is fine. Now I attack Eugen for 3, and they're probably I expected them to minus Eugen for 3, but they didn't do it. They went for the plus again. But they did play the Steerings and find another ring, which was pretty good. But at this point, I was drawing like five cards and draw a bunch of very useful cards. So I attacked the Eugene again, put on 5 lives so they can't exile my binding, and decided to use the binding on their ring. I should have probably waited until they tap for the draw, but yeah, it was still okay. So I went for another Evangel, discard the Grief. I wanted to hold Archon in hand for the hardcast. Opponent now minuses the Eugene and finds another One Ring, which was pretty good at this point. So now they had only 2 cards in hand. They did have the ring, but I also had a ring and a hand full of cards. Solitude also there, and the Ephemerate. So I was hoping to untap with Archon on the field. They only had 2 counters on the ring. And they find the Oblivion Stone, decided to use it. Luckily, the rings are indestructible, and I had the Persist for my Archon, so I didn't care much about that. And I had a Leyline for their ring, so it was a pretty good situation for me still. I find Archon, make them discard. I play, draw a bunch more cards, play the Binding, and hold the Solitude for their turn. Discard the 2 lands. I think I was out of fetchables. Yeah, I was out of fetchables anyway. So opponent goes for the Ulamog. Really didn't care much about this. I just went for they did get the ring back, but they didn't get the protection back, so I didn't really care about this. I had find another Ephemerate, and I was really close to the lethal here. So Ulamog just wasn't doing much at this point. They find another Oblivion Stone, but didn't have enough mana to activate it. They went for the Boseiju instead, drawing another card, which just didn't matter. I went for, didn't even use the Ephemerate. I went for the attack here, force them to discard the last card from their hand, sack the Ulamog, and then Ephemerate them to death. Yeah, so that was it. They discard the last card in hand, sack the Ulamog, and I Ephemerate the Archon for lethal. That was the game. Pretty cool win in game 1 without any hate against Tron. Yeah. I only have to break the ices on my sideboard as a Tron hate. And you can see here how I sideboarded for the Tron matchup. I completely removed all the preordains and a couple of solitudes, one ephemerate, one binding, and one ring, one archon, because I really had a lot of cards I wanted to fit, like spell pierce, like prismatic ending. Okay, so I put archon in the graveyard. Of course, they had the natural Tron. But it didn't even matter. They find a Karn here. I don't know why they went for the Sundering Titan, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, Sundering Titan was cool and all, but I had the Persist here and finding me Godless Shrine. I didn't want to even cast the Godless Shrine because I was expecting the Titan for next turn. So they went for it. They cast the Titan, kill my 2 lands, but they weren't able to get rid of the Archon. So I didn't get another land. I really wanted a second land. Needed a second land to be able to play by Bowmasters, which would then hopefully just end the game. I didn't get it. In meantime, my opponent finds the ring, but is also already on 3 life, so pretty hard situation for them. Very, very hard. They are on 3 life and 1 card in hand. And if they want to use the 1 ring, they have to take damage in their upkeep. So they go for it. Cast the Ulamog, kill my Evangel, kill both of my creatures, leaving me with nothing but this single land. And finally I find that land I needed. And I just cast my Bowmasters and find lethal with 1 ring in their turn next turn, so that was the game. Okay, so let's now check out match 3. I had multiple options here. Again, a 1-lander, and unfortunately it wasn't a blue land. I had a preordain. I went for the Solitude here, exile the Ragavan, pitch cast the Grief, discard the Breach from their hand. They didn't have much here, just Expressive Iteration in hand. So basically I needed just to top deck a land to be in a very good situation. Everything would be castable. But unfortunately I didn't find it. I was definitely taking a risk there, but didn't find it for a lot of turns, and yeah, so that was it. Did find a lot of good spells, but I really needed that second land, so eventually my opponent finds another breach and has the combo, so yeah, we can go to the game 2. Okay, so I played the fetch here, holding the Pierce if needed, also holding the Evangel for turn 2 Archon. This is pretty good hand. I'm able to interact on turn 1. If I draw another black card, I can even go for Grief before I try to play the Evangel. I discard the Archon here and find a Persist. This is ideal. And also have the Spell Pierce available to me. So this was going to be a very quick game. I also had the third land I needed, even had the fourth one. So I went for the played planes. I played the Persist. They played the Spell Pierce. I had a Spell Pierce of my own, and we can see here how I sideboarded this matchup. So I brought in 2 Spell Pierces for 2 Preordains. I also removed all the rings in this matchup. And that's it. Bowmasters for the rings and 2 pierces for 2 preordains. That was the change. Okay, so I had the Evangel here. Also, I had the Grief available for a hard cast. So I went for the Grief, attacked with Evangel. My opponent did find the Urza Saga and had a double removal in hand, but I was still in okay position. They had the Torment Crypt, so I just tried to make the Torment Crypt irrelevant. I discarded the Persist from my hand and find another land to be able to hard cast my Solitude. Okay, so I was able to kill the construct here. And next turn I can cycle the Triumph to grow my Evangel and also still have 2 mana to hard cast the Bowmaster. I find the Preordain from the top, so I decide to go for the Preordain. I put Persist on bottom and find another Bowmaster, which was pretty decent at this point. So I was able now to trade with the Construct token after they blocked with Solitude. Put my opponent on 4 life while hoarding another Bowmaster in hand. Then I played the Bowmaster when they had their bubble resolving, putting them on 1 life with a lot of power on the field, and that was the game. Opponent concedes. Okay, so let's check out game 3, deciding game against Breach. Pretty decent hand here. Pretty decent. Pretty decent hand here. Had the Bowmaster, missing just another white card to scam the Solitude in if needed. I find the Touch. Touch was also cool card for this matchup. I decided to shock in the Godless Shine to be able to hold both Touch and Bowmasters instant speed. Opponent didn't play anything early. I think this is fine for me, going in my favor. Then I think they hardcast the Emery here, and I had multiple options, but I decided the best one is just cast the Bowmaster on my turn and Ephemerate it to ping Emery twice, and then leave the Touch and the Solitude in my hand to be able to hardcast them later. Yeah, it's always very important to kill Emery as soon as possible, especially if they have the Mishra's Bubble available. So I used the Ephemerate on my Bowmaster, making my Orc army 3/3. So I was able to start attacking them and hopefully just get rid of these constructs with the Solitude and the Touch. I decided to fetch for the Blood Crypt and hardcast my Grief, exiling the Breach from their hand, which left them with just 3 lands and Spell Pierce in hand. And of course, they still had this Urza Saga tokens. They top deck the Heat, which wasn't really a problem for me. So I just now I was in a pretty good situation. I knew my opponent doesn't have almost anything, just a Spell Pierce. So I cast my Solitude, attack with the Grief, Menace. They find another Heat to kill the Grief, but I was still in a lot better situation than the opponent. I go for the Evangel here, find the Leyline Binding, then channel the Touch. They can't counter this because it's ability. And attack for 4, putting my opponent on 8 life. So I have very, very close to the lethal. And since they fetched, I do have actually a lethal. My opponent doesn't find anything on their turn and they concede, so that was the match. Okay, so that was match 3. Let's check out the match 4. I started off with Marsh Flats. I had needed... they tried to scam me on turn 1, but I solituded them, solituded the Grief, and still had my own scam available here. But they discard the Persist and also Totseized my One Ring. But I did find the Ephemerate, so I only needed the black card at this point to scam them back. And I find it immediately next turn, so yeah, turn 1 they scam me, turn 3 I scam them. It's only fair. They had a pretty good hand. I discarded 2 Ragavans, Bowmasters. They had a Fable, Doughty, Feign Death, but just 1 land. And they didn't get a second one for a few more turns. And they concede the game. Yeah, that was it. So they didn't get it. They didn't get the land and probably felt like they are too far behind and just conceded at this point. Again, my opponent goes for a Grief turn 1. I use Solitude. And again, they take the Persist. So pretty much almost identical game. I find a Rogrin Tram here and play and scam them turn 2 after they scam me turn 1. So can't be more fair than that. I discard Fury and the Blood Moon from their hand, leaving them with just Undying Malice. So they play the Swamp on their turn and the Turak. So when I rebound the Ephemerate, they play the Malice, leaving them with 0 cards in hand at this point. So now it was a fair game. We were both in a top deck mode, but I got the One Ring. So I only needed a single land to win this game. And that was the reason why I decided to trade for the creatures. And I didn't want to play the Persist. I had a Solitude and a Grief in hand, so I find the land I needed and cast my ring. At this point, I'm on 16 life, and they don't have anything in hand, almost anything on the field, so it's pretty much game over. Actually, they did find Bowmasters from the top of their deck, which was probably among the best top decks at this point. But I used the Persist to I use the Persist to bring back the Solitude and decide to hold the touch for the attack phase. Then I block the Orc and blink the Solitude and the opponent concedes. That was it. Okay, so that was match 4 and let's check out the last one, the match 4, the trophy, which I was playing against Proves and my opponent just, I really need Archon to win this match easily. I really had a good hand, but I was on the draw. So I wasn't able to play this out as I wanted. I went for Grief here. I had a Persist for the next turn. They had a triple bolt and a preordain. I decided to 3 preordains were just too much. I decided to get rid of one of the bolts, and then I persist Grief, and they use their last bolt in the upkeep. I was now already on 10 life. I use the troll and I use the binding, exile the channeler, and I had one ring available for the next turn, but I needed they find Underworld Breach, which was really good. I had to jump with Grief here to not put myself too low on life. Still, I was on 9. I resolved one ring. I had Solitude in hand. Unfortunately, I was out of basics because I needed to fetch my basics to be able to preserve life. Yeah, I now needed like a shock or something like that. But I decided to go for the preordain. Then I find the binding, which was pretty good. And I pitchcast the Solitude to kill another Soul Scar, leaving them with just a single Spear on the field. But yeah, amazingly, they find a fourth. They find played iteration, and they find the fourth lightning bolt, and they also had a lava dart. So it was a pretty crazy hand from the opponent. There was just nothing I could do there, so that was it. I also had a pretty good hand, but I really needed Archon to be able to win this one, and didn't get it on time. So, okay, I decided to mulligan that one and kept hand with the turn 1 Grief Scam. But sometimes, you know, you play the scam deck, you have the turn 1 scam. I took both of their 1-drops, but they top deck Unholy Heat from the top of their deck to kill the Grief immediately, and there's just not much you can do there. They had another Sprite Dragon and the Iteration in hand. I still had a good hand, the Lockdown and the Binding. They went for the Iteration, putting a counter on the Sprite Dragon and playing a Channeler, which was still good. For me, I had a temporary Lockdown for the next turn and Binding for their last Sprite Dragon. So it was pretty decent situation still. I played the Lockdown, exile both of their guys. They go for the Sprite Dragon, another Preordain. And that were like all the cards I know so far. And they find another Bolt to attack me for 3, putting me on 6 life. And now I stabilized on 6. And this was the moment I kind of needed that better top deck. I needed the 4th land. Opponent plays the Giganta. I still have the Leyline for it, so I'm good. I was able actually to scam again and discard both cards from their deck, but they got the Channeler from top of their deck. I cycled in that Triumph, finding the Solitude, but I needed another white card to be able to survive. Didn't get it, and that was it. My opponent just had a better top deck in that last match. And yeah, so the Archon is easiest way to win that matchup because they don't actually play, I think, almost any graveyard hate. So they basically can't win Archon. But Yeah, I had very good hands. I scammed the grief twice in the last game and still lost the match. And that's it. So deck performed pretty good in the updated version. I liked it a lot. Uh, I liked also the Fort Bowmasters I put on the side. Deck works great, has great grind, and has a very powerful early game with 10 ways to scam your grief or solitude early, or just blink your Evangels or Bowmasters post board. And after you use all those cards early, you get to play the One Ring and just fill your hand again with a lot of cards, and this just works well every time. Okay, so that is it. That is the entire league. Hope you liked the gameplay. Hope you liked the video. Again, if you want to help the channel, if you like this content, click like, click subscribe, comment in the video, especially if you have game experience with the list. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching until now, and goodbye.